Stop everything. I need you to close every other tab on your browser. I need you to set down your coffee, mute your phone, and lock the door. I need your absolute undivided attention for the next few minutes because the financial media is deceiving you. They are deceiving you by omission. They're displaying the scoreboard, but they are concealing the fact that the stadium is burning down. Ladies and gentlemen, Asian guy here, known as John A.G. You are examining your trading screen today, Friday, January 9th, 2026, and you are witnessing the price of silver closing at $80.17. You're witnessing a massive green candle up 4.6% in a single trading session. And I know what the sentiment is out there. I see the comment section, I see the tweets, I see the Reddit threads. Everyone is celebrating. Everyone is high-fiving. Everyone is declaring, well, we made it. The breakout is here. The bull market is finally back. You are wrong. You're examining the smoke and ignoring the fire. The price action at $80 is just the symptom. But the real story, the catastrophic structural failure that is unfolding right now, is buried deep inside the technical clearing reports of the CME Group. While the world cheers for the price, the plumbing of the global silver market just sprung a leak that threatens to drain the entire reservoir. We have just received the confirmed data for the January 8th trade date, and it confirms a phenomenon so rare, so dangerous, and so technically abnormal that most modern traders have never even witnessed it in their lifetime. We're not discussing a short squeeze. We're not discussing buying the dip. We are discussing something called backward rolling. I need you to comprehend the gravity of this situation. In the futures market, time is supposed to flow in one direction like a river. As a contract approaches expiration, traders roll forward. They sell the expiring month like January, and they buy the future month like March because they are speculators. They don't want the heavy lifting of physical delivery. They don't want to pay for armored trucks. They just want the price exposure. But yesterday, that river stopped flowing and then it started flowing upstream. We just obtained the confirmed delivery numbers, and they are absolutely terrifying for the bullion banks who manage this casino. 1,624 contracts. That is 1,624 entities who stood up in the middle of a non-delivery month and slammed their fist on the table. That represents over 8 million ounces of physical silver. And here is the critical part. These people did not just stand for delivery. They aggressively moved their positions backward in time. They abandoned the liquid, easy-to-trade March contract. They paid the spread. They paid the transaction costs. They took on the logistical nightmare of immediate settlement. Why? Why would a sophisticated institutional investor rush into an expiring contract at the last possible second just to get their hands on the metal right now? Why wouldn't they just wait 60 days for the March delivery? There is only one answer. Fear. Absolute unadulterated fear. This is a ghost signal. It is the kind of data point that you only witness right before a currency collapse or a supply chain seizure. The price at $80 tells you that demand is high, but 1,624 backward rolls tell you that trust is dead. It tells you that the whales, the industrial giants, the battery manufacturers, and the sovereign wealth funds have stopped believing that the metal will be there in March. They are examining the vaults, they are examining the Chinese export controls, and they are realizing that a paper promise for March is worthless if the vault is empty in February. So they are grabbing the chairs while the music is still playing. They are looting the warehouse before the doors close. And to comprehend why this is the death knell for the paper market, to comprehend why this specific number of contracts is the straw that breaks the camel's back, you have to understand the mechanics of the trap they just walked into. We need to strip away the jargon and examine the trust signal that is flashing red on the dashboard. Because normally, a delivery notice is a routine administrative event. But when you witness delivery notices spiking in a month that is supposed to be dormant, it is like witnessing water recede from the beach before a tsunami. The January contract is technically an active delivery month, but historically the volume dries up by the second week. The big players usually move their money to March, which is the next major front month. That is where the liquidity is. That is where the safety is supposed to be. But examine the open interest data. Examine what happened to the March contract yesterday. While 1,600 contracts appeared out of nowhere in January to demand metal, the March contract bled 2,563 contracts. Money is fleeing the future. It is a run on the bank, but instead of cash, they are running for bars. This phenomenon is essentially the market screaming that time has become a risk factor. In a healthy market, you're happy to wait. You're happy to hold a contract that expires in 2 months because you trust the exchange. You trust that JP Morgan has the silver. You trust that the COMEX has the inventory. But when you are willing to pay a premium, when you are willing to execute a backward roll to get the metal today, you are declaring that the risk of waiting 60 days is infinite. You are declaring that you believe the probability of a default between now and March is non-zero. And that belief is contagious. Once one whale starts backward rolling, the others observe it. They observe the inventory dropping, they observe the delivery notices flying, and they ask themselves, if I wait until March, will I be the one left holding the bag? So they join the stampede, they sell March, they buy January, they buy February, they collapse the timeline. This creates a vicious feedback loop called backwardation. Normally the future price is higher than the spot price because you have to pay for storage and insurance. But right now the spot price is bidding higher than the future. The market is incentivizing you to empty the vaults. The market is punishing you for holding paper. And this is happening exactly at the moment when the physical supply chain is being strangled by the new export laws coming out of Beijing. We have discussed the China shield. We have discussed the solar chokehold. But now we are witnessing the direct consequence of those policies hitting the New York ticker. The 1,624 contracts that stood for delivery yesterday, I would bet my entire reputation that those bars are not going to a warehouse in Delaware. I would bet they're going to a port. They are being prepared for export. They are leaving the COMEX ecosystem forever. And when you extract 8 million ounces out of the float in a single day, in a month that is supposed to be quiet, you fracture the illusion of liquidity. The bullion banks rely on that illusion. They rely on the fact that for every 100 ounces of paper silver they sell, only one person will actually ask for the metal. But yesterday, the ratio broke. Yesterday, the people asking for the metal overwhelmed the people rolling the paper. This is why the price is at $80. It isn't speculation, it is a repricing of risk. It is the market realizing that a paper contract for silver is no longer a substitute for silver itself. It is like holding a ticket to a concert that has already been oversold by 500%. The ticket is nice, but if you don't get through the door now, you aren't seeing the show. So, when the media informs you that silver is up because of inflation expectations or dollar weakness, ignore them. They are reading yesterday's news. Silver is up because of backward rolling. Silver is up because the smart money is fleeing the future to secure the present. And this brings us to the most terrifying question of all. If they are draining the vault in January, what happens when we reach March? What happens when the massive open interest that is still sitting in the March contract tries to convert into physical metal? If the buffet is running out of food during the appetizer round, what happens when the main course is served? The math doesn't work. The inventory isn't there, and the trust signal has already been fired. We need to dissect the mechanics of this anomaly even further. We need to define precisely what backward rolling is for those who are new to futures. Because if you don't comprehend the plumbing, you can't comprehend the explosion. To comprehend the magnitude of what happened yesterday, you have to understand the basic physics of the futures market. Because what we are witnessing is a violation of the laws of financial gravity. In a normal functioning market, in the market that has existed for the last 50 years, the game of futures trading is essentially a game of hot potato. The traders buy contracts to bet on the price, but nobody actually wants the potato. Nobody wants the physical silver. A hedge fund manager in Connecticut does not want 5,000 ounces of silver delivered to his office. He doesn't have a forklift, he doesn't have a vault, he doesn't want to pay for insurance. So, as the delivery month approaches, as the potato gets hot, he gets rid of it. He executes what we call a forward roll. He sells his contract for the current month, let's say January, and he uses that money to buy a contract for a future month, let's say March. He pushes the obligation down the road, he kicks the can. This is how the banks maintain the illusion of unlimited liquidity. They rely on the fact that 99.9% of participants will always roll forward, never asking for the metal, never testing the vault. It is a perpetual cycle of paper shuffling that keeps the price managed and the physical inventory safe. But yesterday, on January 8th, 2026, the music stopped and the players did something that the risk models at JP Morgan say should be statistically impossible. They stopped kicking the can. They stopped playing hot potato. Instead of rolling forward to avoid the metal, they rolled backward to seize it. I want you to picture the mechanics of this trade because it is aggressive, it is violent. These traders were holding March contracts. They were sitting comfortably in the most liquid, safe, standard contract on the board. They had 60 days of time value. They had no immediate pressure. And yet they examined the market. They examined the geopolitical landscape and they declared no. They sold their March positions, which explains why the open interest in March dropped by 2,563 contracts, and they aggressively bought into the January and February contracts. They moved from the future into the present. They moved from the paper month to the delivery month. Now you have to ask yourself, why is this a trust signal? Why is this such a terrifying indicator for the banking cartel? Because in the futures market, you pay a penalty for immediacy. When you roll backward, especially into a delivery month that has already started, you're often crossing the spread. You are paying transaction fees. You're taking on the immediate cost of warehousing, armored transport, and insurance. Financially speaking, it is expensive, it is inefficient. In a world where you trust the system, you would never do this. If you believe that JP Morgan had plenty of silver, and you believe that you could easily get your metal in March, you would simply wait. You would keep your money in your pocket and let the contract ride. The only rational economic reason to pay the premium and roll backward is if you believe that the promise of future delivery is a lie. You are paying for certainty. You're declaring, I do not care about the extra cost. I do not care about the logistics. I care about possession. This is the vote of no confidence. Every single one of those 1,624 contracts represents a sophisticated entity looking the COMEX in the eye and calling their bluff. It is the equivalent of a depositor walking into a bank, witnessing a line of people, and offering to pay the teller a bribe just to get their cash out before the bank closes for the weekend. When you witness backward rolling, you are witnessing the convenience yield, the benefit of holding the physical asset, skyrocket towards infinity. The market is screaming that a bird in the hand is now worth 10 birds in the bush. And for the bullion banks, this is a nightmare scenario because it destroys their ability to manage the price. Their entire manipulation scheme relies on the forward roll. They rely on being able to sell an infinite amount of paper silver for future delivery, knowing they never have to deliver it. But when the market starts rolling backward, the paper turns into lead. It turns into a physical liability that must be settled in bars, not dollars. And bars are finite. You cannot print a bar of silver. You cannot quantitative ease a bar of silver. You have to dig it out of the ground, refine it, and ship it. So when we witness over 8 million ounces demanding immediate delivery in a quiet month, it tells us that the inventory buffer is gone. It tells us that the float, the amount of silver available to lubricate the market, has dried up. And this is why the banks are terrified. Because if 1,600 people want their metal in January, how many will want it in March? If the panic is starting now while the price is at $80, what happens when the price breaks $85? Backward rolling is the first crack in the dam. It is the smart money exiting the paper Ponzi scheme before the general public even realizes the game is rigged, and the data proves it. We aren't just guessing here. We aren't just examining the price and making assumptions. We have the smoking gun. We have the hard numbers from the CME that prove precisely where the bodies are buried. We need to examine the specific breakdown of the open interest changes because the devil is in the details. We need to examine how March bled while January exploded. Let's open the ledger. Let's examine the evidence that proves the exodus has begun. We are not dealing with rumors here. We are not dealing with speculation on a Twitter thread. We are dealing with the cold, hard forensic accounting of the CME Group Daily Bulletin. This document is the black box of the silver market. It records every single trade, every single open position, and every single delivery notice. And for the trade date of January 8th, 2026, the black box just screamed. I want you to examine the ledger with me. I want you to witness the blood on the page. Let's start with the most critical line item, deliveries. In a standard non-delivery month like January, you expect to witness a handful of deliveries, maybe 10, maybe 20. Just a few stragglers settling up. But yesterday the report shows 1,624 delivery notices issued. Let me write that out for you so it sinks in. 1,624. Each one of those contracts is 5,000 ounces. That is 8 million. 120,000 ounces of silver that just vanished from the available float in a single 24-hour period. That is not a straggler. That is a raid. That is a coordinated extraction event. But that is only half the story. To witness the backward rolling, you have to examine where these contracts came from. You have to examine the open interest changes, which show you where the money is moving. Examine the March contract. March is the front month. It is the deepest pool of liquidity on the board. It is where all the big money is supposed to be parked right now. But yesterday, the March contract didn't grow. It didn't stay flat. It bled. The open interest in March dropped by 2,563 contracts. Now, normally when open interest drops, it means people are closing out their positions. They are taking profits and going home. But if they were just closing out, the total open interest for the whole market would drop by the same amount. That didn't happen. The money didn't leave the casino. It just moved to a different table. It moved to the immediate delivery table. Examine February. February is a ghost town. It is a nothing month. Nobody trades February because it is sandwiched between the active January and the active March. And yet yesterday, the open interest in February rose by 378 contracts. Why? Why would hundreds of traders suddenly pile into an illiquid dead month? Because February is closer than March. Because they are desperate to cut the line. They are willing to sit in a dead month just to be 30 days closer to the metal than the people sitting in March. This is the behavior of a starving man pushing his way to the front of the buffet line. He doesn't care about manners. He doesn't care about the protocol. He just wants to eat. And then examine back at January. The January open interest didn't just drop by the amount of deliveries. We witnessed 1,447 contracts of volume trade on the Globex electronic system in January yesterday. Do you comprehend how insane that is? The contract is expiring, the delivery notices are flying, the liquidity is supposed to be zero. And yet, 1,400 people were frantically trading in that phone booth. They were buying the contracts that the banks were trying to offload and then immediately slamming them for delivery. The math is undeniable. March lost 2,500 contracts. January and February absorbed the pressure and converted it into physical metal. This is the definition of a bank run. When you witness depositors moving their money from a 5-year CD to a checking account, it means they want liquidity. When you witness silver traders moving from March to January, it means they want bars. This is the smoking gun. It proves that the price action we are witnessing at $80 is not driven by speculation. It is driven by a tangible physical shortage that is forcing the biggest players to cannibalize the future to survive the present. They are eating their seed corn. They are draining the March liquidity pool to satisfy the January demand. But here's the problem with that strategy. The March pool is finite. The open interest in March is now down to roughly 102,800 contracts. That sounds like a lot, but it is shrinking every day. And as it shrinks, the buffer that protects the COMEX from a default gets thinner and thinner. Every time a whale rolls backward, the wall gets weaker, and we are watching it crumble in real time. But why now? Why is this specific date, January 8th, the tipping point? What changed in the psychology of the market to trigger this stampede? It isn't just random fear. It is a rational response to a new economic reality that has emerged in the last 48 hours. We need to discuss convenience yield. We need to explain the economic force that causes a time preference collapse. Because when the convenience yield goes parabolic, the futures market dies. And we are watching the heartbeat flatline. Let's go to the economics. Let's explain why holding a paper contract has suddenly become the most dangerous trade on earth. To comprehend why a sophisticated trader would willingly light money on fire to get out of a March contract and into a January one, we have to discuss a concept that usually only exists in the dusty textbooks of economic theory. We have to discuss convenience yield. Now, I know that sounds like a boring academic term. I know it sounds like something you would sleep through in a university lecture, but right now convenience yield is the most violent force in the global financial system. It is the invisible hand that is strangling the COMEX. In a normal world, in the world we lived in for the last 40 years, holding physical silver was a burden. It was inconvenient. If you hold a bar of silver, you have to pay for a vault. You have to pay for insurance. You have to worry about theft. You have to hire a guard. It costs money to hold it. So traditionally, the convenience yield of silver was low or even negative. This is why the futures price was always higher than the spot price. The market rewarded you for holding the paper contract because the paper was easy. The paper was clean. The paper had no storage fees. This condition is called contango. It is the sign of a healthy, well-supplied market where nobody is worried about running out of stuff. But yesterday, that logic inverted. The backward rolling we just witnessed proves that the convenience yield of holding physical silver has just gone parabolic. Suddenly, the benefit of having the metal in your hand right here, right now, outweighs all the costs of storage, all the costs of insurance, and all the transaction fees combined. Why? Because the market has realized that the paper contract carries a new hidden cost that isn't written in the prospectus. It carries the cost of counterparty risk. It carries the risk that the person on the other side of the trade won't have the metal when you ask for it. It is the risk of the empty vault. Think of it like water in a desert. If you're standing in a city with plenty of water, a voucher for a bottle of water to be delivered next week is fine. You are happy to wait. But if you're stranded in the middle of the Sahara Desert and you are dying of thirst, a voucher for next week is worthless. It has zero value. You will trade your entire life savings for a bottle of water right now. That is convenience yield. It is the desperation premium. And right now, the silver market is in the desert. The 1,624 entities who rolled backward yesterday are the thirsty men. They examined the March contract and witnessed a voucher for water in a future that might never come. They examined the geopolitical chaos. They examined the shrinking inventories. And they realized that time is no longer an asset. Time is an enemy. Every day you wait is a day that the export controls could tighten. Every day you wait is a day that J.P. Morgan could declare a force majeure. Every day you wait is a gamble with your survival. This psychological shift is what we call a time preference collapse. In a stable society, people have low time preference. They plan for the future. They invest for 10 years down the road. But in a collapsing system, time preference skyrockets. The horizon shrinks from years to days. Nobody cares about the price of silver in 2027. They only care about the price of silver tonight. And this collapse of the time horizon breaks the pricing models of the banks. The banks use algorithms that assume a stable time preference. They assume that if they raise the price of the March contract enough, people will sell January and buy March. They assume that every man has a price at which he will wait. But yesterday, the algorithms failed. The banks likely tried to bribe the longs to roll forward. They likely offered incentives, and the longs declared no, because you cannot bribe a drowning man with a promise of oxygen next month. This is why the backward roll is so significant. It marks the moment where the utility of the paper market drops to zero. If the futures market cannot guarantee delivery, it ceases to be a mechanism for hedging or price discovery. It just becomes a casino for gambling on fiat currency fluctuations. And the real players, the industrial users who need silver to build missiles and solar panels and servers, are leaving the casino. They are taking their chips to the cage and demanding the real asset. This drains the liquidity. It creates a vacuum, and nature abhors a vacuum. But there is one final piece to this puzzle. We know why they are scared. They are scared of the shortage. But where is the silver actually going? When these 1,600 contracts get delivered, where do the bars go? They don't disappear into thin air. They're being sucked into a specific gravitational vortex that has opened up on the other side of the planet. We need to connect the dots between the New York panic and the Shanghai premium. We need to examine the Asian vortex, because the reason the convenience yield is so high in New York is because the price in China is $7 higher. The thirst is global, but the water is flowing east. Let's examine the destination of the metal. Let's explain why the West is being drained dry. If you want to know where the bodies are buried, or in this case where the bars are vanishing, you just have to follow the money. And right now, the money trail leads directly across the Pacific Ocean, straight into the vaults of the Shanghai Gold Exchange. The 1,624 contracts that stood for delivery yesterday didn't just decide to hold physical silver for fun. They aren't building a fort out of bullion in their backyard. They are responding to the most powerful economic force on the planet, arbitrage. We have to discuss the Asian vortex. Right now, as we speak on Friday, January 9th, there's a massive price dislocation in the global silver market. While you're examining the COMEX price of $80 in New York, the price of physical silver in Shanghai is trading significantly higher. We are witnessing premiums of $7 or more per ounce. Do you comprehend what that means for a global trader? It means that if you can get your hands on a bar of silver in New York for $80, you can instantly turn around and sell it in China for $87. That is a risk-free profit of nearly 10% in a matter of days. It is an infinite money glitch. And the only thing stopping you, the only bottleneck, is actually getting the physical metal out of the COMEX vault. This explains the backward rolling perfectly. The traders who are rushing into the January contract aren't just scared of a default. They are greedy. They are racing to grab the inventory in New York so they can ship to Shanghai before the window closes. Every day they wait is a day of lost profit. Every day they wait is a day that the arbitrage window might slam shut due to new export controls or shipping blockades. So they are cannibalizing the March contract to feed the January export machine. They are draining the West to feed the East. This is why the convenience yield is exploding. The convenience is the ability to export. The bar in New York is just a raw material. The bar in Shanghai is a finished product, and the COMEX is being stripped bare to satisfy this insatiable demand. But it isn't just about profit, it is about strategy. China isn't paying a premium because they like shiny rocks. They are paying a premium because they need the metal. As of January 1st, 2026, China implemented strict export controls on critical minerals, including silver. They have effectively told the world what is in China stays in China. But they didn't stop importing. They are hoarding. They are building a strategic silver reserve to match their dominance in solar panel manufacturing. They know that silver is the new oil. They know that the green energy transition is impossible without it. So they are using their massive trade surplus to suck every available ounce of silver out of the Western financial system. They are weaponizing the arbitrage. They are keeping the Shanghai price artificially high to act as a vacuum cleaner for global inventory. And the Western banks, JP Morgan, the COMEX, they are helpless to stop it. They are bound by their own rules. If a trader stands for delivery in New York, the bank must give them the metal. They cannot declare, no, we don't want you to ship it to China. That would be a default. That would break the market instantly. So they are forced to hand over the bars. They are forced to watch their vaults drain day by day, knowing full well that those bars are never coming back. Once a bar enters the Shanghai Gold Exchange ecosystem, it is gone. It is removed from the Western float forever. It is a one-way valve. This is the context for the trust signal we witnessed yesterday. The backward rolling is the sound of the exit door slamming. The smart money knows that the vault is leaking. They know that JP Morgan cannot keep feeding the Chinese vacuum cleaner forever. At some point, and that point is coming very soon, the inventory will hit zero, or more likely, the inventory will hit effective zero, where the only metal left is owned by people who refuse to sell at any price. When that happens, the arbitrage stops, because there is nothing left to arbitrage. And when the arbitrage stops, the price in New York has to do one thing. It has to rise to meet Shanghai. It has to gap up by $7 overnight just to stop the bleeding. The Asian vortex will force the COMEX to reprice reality. So when you witness the price hitting $80 today, do not think it is expensive. Think of it as a discount. Think of it as a mispricing that is currently being corrected by the brutal efficiency of the physical market. The West is currently holding a going out of business sale on silver, and the East is buying the entire store. The 1,600 contracts yesterday were just the early shoppers rushing the doors. The real crowd hasn't even arrived yet. And this brings us to the inevitable conclusion. We have the price breakout. We have the backward rolling anomaly. We have the time preference collapse. And we have the Asian vortex. All of these roads lead to the same destination. They lead to a price target that sounded impossible just a few months ago, but now looks mathematically guaranteed. We need to discuss triple digits. We need to map out the final leg of this journey. Let's wrap this up. Let's inform you precisely what is going to happen next. So, this brings us to the final verdict. We have laid out the evidence. We have witnessed the backward rolling, the ghost signal that proves the smart money is terrified of the future. We have witnessed the convenience yield explode, proving that a bar in the hand is worth infinitely more than a promise on paper. We have tracked the 1,624 contracts that abandoned the March liquidity pool to seize metal right now. And we have traced the flow of that metal into the Asian vortex, where the Shanghai premium acts as a relentless vacuum cleaner, draining the Western vaults. The picture is not just clear, it is blinding. The bridge to $100 has been built. It is no longer a question of if, it is barely even a question of when. The mechanics of the market have already decided the outcome. You have to comprehend that markets like this do not reverse. When trust breaks, it does not heal overnight. When a depositor runs to the bank to pull their cash, they don't turn around and put it back the next day because the manager smiled at them. Once the fear of a shortage sets in, it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. The panic buying creates the shortage, which creates more panic buying. The backward rolling we witnessed yesterday is just the first tremor of the earthquake. Next, we will witness the industrial users panic. The solar companies, the battery makers, the defense contractors, they will examine this data and realize they are naked. They will realize their supply chains are vulnerable. And they will enter the market not to speculate, but to hoard. They will buy at $80, they will buy at $90, they will buy at $100 because the alternative is shutting down their factories. The alternative is bankruptcy. So what does this mean for you? It is simple. Do not be shaken out. Do not examine the volatility that is coming and get scared. The banks will try to fight back. They will try to smash the paper price in the overnight sessions. They will try to paint the charts red to convince you that the rally is over. But you know the truth. You know that every time they smash the paper price, they just widen the spread with Shanghai. They just make the vacuum cleaner stronger. The system is broken. The trust that held the paper market together for 50 years has evaporated in a puff of logic. We are moving back to a world of hard assets. A world where possession is 9/10 of the law. A world where wealth in hand destroys wealth on paper. We are examining a target of $100, not as a ceiling, but as a checkpoint. Once we cross that psychological barrier, the floodgates open, the mainstream media wakes up, the retail herd arrives, and by the time they get here, the vault will be empty. The sold-out signs will be up, and the only people holding silver will be the ones who acted when the backward rolling started, the ones who acted today. This is your window. The signal has fired. The data is confirmed. The March contract is bleeding. The January contract is feasting. Don't be the person waiting for March. Be the person demanding delivery now. Secure your metal. Secure your future. The rocket is fueling up on the pad. The countdown has effectively reached 0. This is John. The backward roll is the smoking gun. The destination is triple digits. Remember to like, subscribe, and share.